Chapter 0. Prologue. So Deku, when are you going to get your quirk? I mean, at this point you are probably the only one in our class who doesn't have a quirk yet. Said a young boy with messy ash blonde spiky hair. He was sitting with 3 other boys, but the one he was talking to was the one sitting across from him. I don't know, but it should be any time now, but my mom is taking me to the doctor today to get his advice. Said the boy with hair so white that it almost seemed to glow and eyes that looked like light blue crystals. Yeah, well, whatever you get won't be as cool as my quirk, he said while he was creating sparks in his palms. He hadn't told anyone, but he was extremely worried about the fact that his quirk hadn't manifested yet, especially since he knew there were some people who never got quirks and he definitely couldn't have that, seeing as he wanted to be a hero. They hung out for a little bit longer, but eventually Midoriya left, seeing as his mom was taking him to the hospital today and he couldn't miss it. Midoriya was sitting in the doctor's office with his mom waiting to get the doctor's results on his quirk issues. When the doctor finally showed up, Midoriya almost fell out of his chair, but he kept his cool and waited for the doctor to sit down and tell them the news. Well, Mrs. Midoriya, I am sure you will be happy to know that according to what we currently understand about quirks, your son should get a quirk any day now, the doctor said with a faint trace of a smile on his face. Immediately after, the doctor said that Midoriya got out of his chair and started jumping around. Could you please tell me what quirks you or your husband have, ma'am? He asked while looking at the young Midoriya jumping around. Oh, my husband can breathe fire and I can attract small objects towards me. Not the best quirk in the world, but it's useful enough around the house, she said with a tinge of red on her face. Well, then he should get either one of these quirks or maybe a combination of these quirks by the next month, and if he doesn't, you can come back, and we can try to work something out, he said. Oh, doctor, before I leave I wanted to ask you about something. Lately Izuku has been very cold to the touch. I thought about taking him to a doctor, but he didn't seem to be sick, but now that I am here, could you please take a look at him? Well, cold temperatures can be problematic, but that is not my field, so I will transfer you to someone who is better suited to help you. After finishing up with the quirk specialist, they went to a GP to see what's up with Izuku's temperature, and they had a couple of tests and the doctor confirmed that Izuku's body temperature did seem to be dangerously low. After seeing Izuku's low temperature, the doctor decided to keep him overnight so that they can monitor him and run some tests to see what was happening. It was insane. It seemed like Izuku's temperature was steadily decreasing as time went on, and it seemed like this had been happening for quite a while, and in all honesty the fact that he seemed to be healthy was baffling. The next day they spent almost the entire day at the hospital with the doctors monitoring Izuku and running tests on him, but they couldn't seem to find anything wrong with him, and so they concluded that it might have something to do with his quirk. They decided to let him go, seeing as they really couldn't find anything wrong with him and he seemed to not be in any pain or cold or anything else really. He just seemed to be confused on why they were running so many tests on him. When Midoriya and his mom got home, it was already late afternoon, and so his mom decided to start on dinner while he went to the living room to watch TV. He was watching a show called Adventure Time on Cartoon Network. It was an American show, but it was Japanese dubbed, and so he didn't have to worry about the fact that he couldn't speak English. The Chamber of Frozen Blades, huh? Sounds pretty interesting, he said to himself when the episode title came on. He had been watching the episode for a while, and after Finn and Jake's ninja battle he paused the TV and went to his room and got a little cloth to be his headband, and when he got back he rewound it to when Finn performed his first Fujitsu. Fujitsu Master Izuku summons Dagger of Chilled Glass, he said while imitating the hand signs that Finn was making, and to his amazement after he pulled his hands apart to make room for the dagger to materialize, what seemed to be pure white snow gathered between his hands and started swirling and twisting. This lasted for a few seconds before it started to harden and take form until he was now looking at a beautiful blue dagger that looked a lot like Finn's dagger, but his dagger seemed like it was more expertly crafted and it was a different shade of blue from Finn's dagger, and for some reason it felt like a part of him. Wow, cool, I am a ninja, he said while swinging the dagger around, and after a while he decided to try other moves. Fujitsu Master Izuku summoned Stars of Frozen Rain, he said while imitating Jake, and to his astonishment he was able to do it again, even though his shuriken still looked like a different color from Jake's and still looked to be more expertly crafted. After confirming that it worked, he tried all the other moves they pulled of, and most of them worked, and he was even able to do the kunai attack by making his own kunai, but he still couldn't do moves that weren't directly about ice like the Jake clones. After playing around for a little bit, he went to the kitchen to show his mom what he could do. "Mom, look, I am a ninja," he said, and when his mom turned to look at him, he performed the first technique he used and summoned the dagger. When Inko saw Izuku materialize a dagger out of thin air, she almost fainted, but she kept herself together. "Izuku, please put that away, it's dangerous," she said, and after Izuku put it on the table, she asked him, "Show here where he learned that." He took her to the living room, and when she got there, she was amazed to see that it was filled with weapons and snow. Izuku showed her the program he was watching, and after thinking about it, she realized that this was Izuku's quirk and it had just activated when he tried to copy the program. This explained why he was so cold and his hair color, seeing as for some reason a lot of people with ice quirks had white hair, but it didn't explain why his quirk was so different from her and her husband's quirk. Ice manipulation. How did he even get a quirk like that? She thought to herself. She did not know a lot about quirk genetics, but she knew enough to know that this was not normal, but she supposed that it could be some kind of mutation. She asked him to tell her everything he had done, and when he was done talking, she realized that his quirk sounded pretty powerful and definitely would make him a great hero. After he told her everything, she told him about the fact that this was his quirk, and she asked him to try to make the weapons without the ninja stuff, and he was immediately able to make them by just thinking about it. After finding out that this was his quirk and it seemed like he could control ice at will, Midoriya started jumping around in delight. Inko left him to his own devices and just finished making dinner, and while they were eating, Izuku kept experimenting with his powers and making other things. He even made a little All Might statue at some point. After dinner, Inko put on some gloves and put away all of the weapons, seeing as even if they were very beautiful and looked to be works of art, they were still crafted using ice, and so they were cold, plus they were weapons, and she didn't want to get cut. "I am going to be the greatest hero ever," he said with a huge smile on his face. Yeah, I know, now stop squirming around and let me tuck you in, my brave hero," Inko said with an equally big smile. When she tried to kiss him goodnight, he stopped her. "I have my quirk now, which means I am a man now, and so I don't need any more goodnight kisses," Izuku said with what he thought was a manly face, but to Inko it just looked incredibly cute. "Okay, my brave hero, I won't kiss you goodnight anymore," she said. After she turned off the lights, neither her nor Izuku saw the thin layer of ice that was spreading on his bed. After tucking him in, she went to her own room and got into bed. Ever since Izuku had said that he wants to be a hero, she had been worried that he would get her power, because she knew that if he got her power it would be very hard to use it in a fight. She had been praying that he would get her husband's quirk because she really wanted him to be able to live his dream, and his father's quirk would definitely make it easier. For days she hadn't been able to sleep because of the stress of all this quirk business, but it seemed like Izuku had gotten a powerful quirk, and so she didn't need to worry anymore about whether he would be able to become a hero or not. She still couldn't understand how Izuku got that quirk, but she decided to just sleep and ask the doctor tomorrow. The next morning, Inko decided that her and Izuku would go to the doctor after school, seeing as he had already missed one day and she didn't want him to miss another one. When Izuku got up, he didn't even see that his bed was covered in ice, seeing as he was in a hurry because him and his mom had slept so late last night, and because of that they had set their alarms for a bit later than usual to get more sleep. It seems they had underestimated the number of things they have to do in the morning because they were late, and so Inko decided she would make Izuku's bed when she got back. "I am very sorry that I didn't call you, I guess I was just panicking," she said. She had just told the teacher the reason for Izuku's absence. "No problem, ma'am, I can understand how scary that would be. Anyway, Izuku, now that your quirk has manifested, would you mind showing the class?" she said with a smile on her face. Izuku got in front of the class and made a kunai. He had found that he liked the general feel of a kunai in his hand, and even though he was still very young, he still couldn't help but marvel at the craftsmanship of the thing. Everyone in the class was impressed by what Midoriya could do, but Bakugo was a little annoyed by the whole thing because it was taking the spotlight away from him, but he was still confident he could win, and that is all that mattered to him. The teacher put her hand on Izuku's head to congratulate him on getting his quirk, but immediately when her hand touched Izuku's head she started screaming in what sounded to be excruciating pain, and after a couple of seconds she was completely frozen. All of the kids started screaming except for Izuku, who just seemed to be shocked. While all this was happening, Inko got herself together and called 911. After emergency services showed up, the kids were allowed to go home while Izuku, the frozen teacher, and his mom all went to the hospital. After his mom told them all what happened, no one wanted to touch Izuku. After they got to the hospital, they put Izuku under, seeing as he seemed to be in a very bad state, and they started trying to unfreeze the woman, but nothing seemed to work, and so they got help from the government. They were able to melt the ice in a day or two after getting help from the government, but it still took them about a week to figure out all the properties of the ice. During that time Izuku had already been awake, but they had kept him at the hospital for observation, a couple of tests, and so that he could get some therapy, seeing as what he underwent was very confusing to a child. Izuku had spent that entire week in a very weird state. He really did not know what was going on, but he knew that he had killed his teacher and he was super depressed about that, but during the course of the week he did get slightly better. Everyone was in a gloomy mood, and they really could not be blamed, seeing as the entire week it had been snowing for some reason even though it was spring. After that week the doctors and scientists had gotten all the information they needed to know for now, and so they decided to reveal their findings to Izuku and his mother. They revealed that Izuku's ice was not strictly ice but some kind of new material which seemed to be ice infused with crystalline particles or something like that still were not sure about the specifics. They dubbed it crystal ice, and they had determined that this would be a very powerful quirk, seeing as the ice was almost impossible to break by normal means and it was also almost impossible to melt. They had determined that if Izuku ever mastered it he would have the perfect defense and offense, plus there was also the fact that he seemed to have more control over his ice than the average ice quirk user. They had also cautioned Midoriya against letting anybody touch his skin directly until he can control his powers, and they recommended he always wear long-sleeved shirts and long pants with a scarf and gloves. After making sure he understood the dangers of his quirk they let him go. On their way home they got Izuku the clothes he needed. After they got home Inko decided to have a talk with her son, seeing as she didn't get a chance to talk to him for the entire week. She called him over and they sat by the computer. "Izuku, honey, how are you feeling?" she asked him. "I killed someone. Heroes don't kill people," he said with tears raining down his face. "I'll never be able to look at the other kids the same again, and I'll never use this power again." He finished. "That wasn't your fault, Izuku. You didn't know that your quirk could do that. You do still want to be a hero, don't you?" she said, and he gave her a hesitant nod. "Then that's it. You will work on your quirk until you master it, and then you will use it to save people as a way of making up for what happened, okay?" she said, and he gave her another hesitant nod. "I know how you feel, and so I talked to my father and he said that we could move in with him. Before you say anything, I know you are going to miss your friends, but I really think it will do you some good if we get away from this place and start over somewhere new. Plus Dad has a lot of land where you can practice with your quirk," she said, and even though he looked like he wanted to protest he didn't say anything. Izuku really wanted to say no, but he knew that his mom also didn't want this move, but she was doing it for him so that he can feel better and not be traumatized every day he has to go to school, and so he decided to just bear it and just try to make his mom proud. After that they stayed another week and then they left. During that week Midoriya had refused to see anybody, and so he left without even saying goodbye. When the car pulled up to his grandfather's house, Izuku was amazed. The house was huge and the surrounding land was incredibly beautiful. When Izuku met his grandfather, he was surprised. He didn't know what he was expecting, but it was not what he got. His grandfather was funny and nice and just an all-around big goof. He had been here for just one day and he had to admit he loved it here. He was in the woods and just practicing throwing kunai. During the week where they had been sorting out the last of their stuff before they left, he had taken to throwing kunai at a tree to distress. The problem was that he had terrible aim, and so now he was just practicing his aim. He was so engrossed in his throwing that he didn't hear the rustling of the leaves indicating that someone was coming. "You are doing it wrong," he heard someone say, and he almost jumped out of his skin, but when he turned back he saw his grandfather. "Don't scare me like that. Anyway, how would you know that?" he asked. "I heard that you want to be a hero," his grandfather said, seemingly avoiding his question. "Well, yes, but what does that have to do with my question to you? Did you know that I too wanted to be a hero at some point?" he asked, to which Izuku shook his head. "Well, anyway, I wanted to be a hero, but I decided that my quirk, which is the same one as your mother's, wouldn't be sufficient to be a hero, and so I decided I would become a martial arts hero. After this decision I found the best dojo around and enrolled. It was a great dojo with amazing masters, but it did not have too many students due to his dojo being so far away from major cities. They had a couple of disciplines, but I chose the ninja arts since I thought it would be cool," he said with a huge smile on his face. You know I could introduce you to the master if you want. If you really want to be a great hero, I think you will need to know martial arts. He said. Wow, really, that would be great. Midoriya said while jumping around. Inko was not very enthusiastic about the idea of Izuku learning martial art, but she agreed that if he knew martial arts it would help him become a better hero, and so she decided that he would go back to school this coming week and then start his martial arts next week. The week came and went without any major events, and the weekend for his first martial arts class was here. After getting to the dojo, they explained Izuku's quirk situation to the master, and since Izuku was the grandson of an old pupil, he decided to let him stay, and they actually got him a full ninja outfit with a mask and everything so that he could participate. Izuku took to the training like a fish to the water and really pushed himself in his ninja training, and even more so in his quirk training. He did everything he could possibly think of with his ice, and he even went online to see how other people use their ice quirks and practiced with that as well, until he reached a point where he felt like he was sort of comfortable controlling his ice powers. But even if he felt somewhat comfortable, he still never let up and kept training with his powers, because he was no fool and he knew that his ice powers still held many secrets, and so he had to try his best to reach its full potential. During that time he also studied the quirks of multiple heroes and just overall seeing how they utilized their quirks so that he could push his to its limit. After years of training he finally reached a point where he was comfortable enough with his quirk and his martial arts to combine them, and he even added some moves from Fujitsu as an homage to the thing that helped him discover his powers. During the years he had collapsed many times from exhaustion, but he had kept on going, and eventually his final year of junior high came. He had already decided that he would be going to UA, and so now he just had to finish polishing his skills. After the years of work, the day finally came for Izuku's destiny to begin.